The calorie deficit only narrative and where it breaks down. In the fitness industry, you'll often hear a very simplified claim. Fat loss is just a calorie deficit, eat less than you burn. Whilst technically this statement may be correct, fat loss cannot occur without an energy deficit. But the way that the idea is applied to the real world is where the wheels potentially can come off. A common scenario could look like this. A client, a friend of yours, will start dieting. The calories are reduced, the weight may drop initially, the progress stalls, the calories are reduced again, and again, the weight stalls again. Fast forward 6 months and you've now got a full-grown adult, often being a woman, eating 1,200 calories or less and losing nothing. At this point, the industry explanation usually becomes, your metabolism is broken. It's slowed down. And that's not what's happening, because you see, your metabolism doesn't have a speedo. Your metabolism isn't broken. Your metabolism in your body is doing what it's evolved to do, to survive. So what actually happens when calories keep dropping? The human body is not a static system. It is an adaptive system. When calories are aggressively restricted over time, the body responds through a process called metabolic adaptation. And several things can begin to occur, often simultaneously. First of all, our basal metabolic rates. Your basal metabolic rate is basically the energy that's required just to keep you alive at rest. Laying there, in a coma even, just breathing. Several dieting signals are an energy shortage. The body responds by reducing energy expenditure. This occurs through reduced thyroid output, reduced sympathetic nervous system activity, and a low cellular energy turnover, the result of which is now that you will burn fewer calories at rest than before the diet began. Let's jump into the lean tissues, muscle as we would call it. When calories are cut aggressively, particularly if protein and resistance training are inadequate, the body will start to lose the lean tissue. This includes your skeletal muscle, the organ tissue, your structural proteins, the stuff that is basically metabolically active. Lose that muscle, daily energy expenditure will drop further. Now let's talk about what we call NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. In a nutshell, it's the things that you do, the fidgeting, the getting up, the moving, the stuff that is really not exercise during a day. One of the biggest but least understood adaptations occurs in this area. Because as I said, NEAT includes the standing, the walking, the fidgeting, the posture maintenance, the daily movement. Under calorie restriction, the brain will unconsciously reduce this activity. You move less, you sit more, you fidget less. And this can equate to hundreds of calories per day without a person even noticing. Jumping into this, we then go to hormonal sides. Energy restriction will also affect your appetite regulation. Some key changes: leptin, it decreases, therefore as hunger rises. Ghrelin increases as appetite intensifies, and cortisol increases when stress signaling rises. This is why an aggressive diet is almost always ending in some sort of binge and restrict cycle. The body is trying to restore some level of energy balance. So why weight loss will eventually stall? When someone repeatedly cuts calories, the body will close the gap. So let's say you take in 2,000 calories, you expend 2,500, you get a deficit of 500. Okay, you get a bit of a weight loss occurs. But after a while, you're eventually going to be, you're generating, calories in of say 1,500, your calories out are 1,500 because you're doing not much more. You got a zero deficit and therefore your weight loss stalls. Even though the person is eating far less food, they have essentially dieted metabolism downwards. So reverse dieting is a phrase where we basically talk about eating and building it back up. And why is this often recommended? Well, to address this, many coaches will talk about reverse dieting. This involves basically, as we said, gradually increasing your calorie intake, getting your body to a point where we stabilize your body weight and allowing the metabolic systems to recover. Again, we're recovering. We are not speeding up our metabolism. And then at some point, We will then reintroduce a small deficit at a later date. But the goal should be restore our BMR, our basal metabolic rate, restore our NEAT, our non-exercise activity, restore our hormonal balance, and get our training performance back into whack. In practice, we simply do that, and whilst maintaining the same amount of body weight, once we've done that, the body is functioning normal again, and that small little deficit that can get introduced will start to kick off the weight loss cycle again. But is there a problem with a reverse diet deficit cycle? Let's see. Whilst reverse dieting can be useful in damaged metabolic situations, it's maybe not something ideal for the long term, because repeated cycles of aggressive dieting and recovery can lead to things like chronic muscle loss, particularly if resistance training is not prioritized, and repeating dieting erases lean muscle mass over tasks. Yep, easy. Lean muscle mass lowers metabolic activity and your capacity. We jump into diet fatigue, so long periods of restriction can create psychological fatigue, an obsession with particular types of food, and a reduced adherence, and eventually people stop dieting altogether, and that weight is just like a rebound. The weight regain, particularly after severe dieting, hunger hormones remain elevated for months, normal eating resumes, calorie intake will often overshoot, resulting back in that rapid gain. And it's why the crash often produces what we simply call these yo-yo patterns. Now, the modern evidence-based approach, current evidence in psychology and physiology and performance nutrition point towards a different long-term strategy. Instead of shrinking calorie intake, the goal is to expand your metabolic capacity. And this is achieved through a number of different mechanisms. Just go and have a look at your most famous sports star, who very rarely does do the binge restrict cycle. Number one, we start to build lean muscle. Muscle tissue is metabolically active and increases daily energy expenditure. And more importantly, getting more muscle improves your glucose disposal, your insulin sensitivity, and your nutrient partitioning. In simple terms, calories are more likely to be directed towards muscle repair rather than fat storage. Strength training will become your cornerstone and not optional with the cardio. We still need to have that in there. Increase your daily movement, increase your NEAT. The largest contributor to daily energy in most people is not exercise, it's your simple daily movement. So increasing your NEAT can include a number of things: getting your steps up, some standing desks for those of you who can, active commuting, like get off at the bus stop, one stop further, general lifestyle movement. And this approach can raise your calorie expenditure without actually stressing the body the way some form of excessive cardio may do. More importantly, we need to maintain an adequate food intake. Rather than driving our calories low, the modern approach is about maintaining adequate intake to support your body's physiology. A higher protein intake, a strength training stimulus, high daily movement, some moderate calorie deficit. It becomes small, but it's sustainable, and over time weight loss can occur, but with minimal muscle loss, keeping stability in our hormones and helping you address the fact of your adherence is actually there. The real principle that we really should be thinking about is this: fat loss still requires us to have a calorie deficit. That has never changed. But the modern strategy, or the right strategy, is really not to starve the system, but it's to build a bigger metabolic engine so that fat loss can occur while the body remains functional, strong, and sustainable long term. In other words, let's keep this simple. The goal isn't to eat as little as possible. The goal is to build a body that can burn more whilst eating more. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Strength training, muscle mass, daily movement, they all help with great nutrition to make that possible. And that's why this simplistic advice of just eat less often fails in the real world and gets people really fucked up.